If you're using WordPress, you have so many options for hosting, but some of the hosting options, you only host one instance of WordPress. So one client on one VM, one solution, one whatever it is. And the problem with that is it can get quite expensive when you have 10, 20 clients. So something you can do is actually use Apache Virtual Host or even Nginx. But in this video, we're going to do Apache Virtual Host that lets you host multiple WordPress clients on one single virtual machine. To do this, we're going to use Civo Cloud because it's really affordable virtual VM hosting and also Kubernetes cluster, but we're going to focus on the VM for this today. And then we're also going to do Apache install, PHP install, MySQL install. We'll set up WordPress, and if we get time, we'll do a firewall. Let's see how it goes. If that sounds interesting to you, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe below and hit the bell button so you get notified every time I post a video and go live. So I've logged into Civo. By the way, you get $250 worth of free credit when signing up. And I've got some existing virtual machines, but we're going to create a new one for today. And I will probably call this one Jald Studios Videos. It's going to be one instance. We're going to make it small. And we'll make it Ubuntu and the latest LTS, which is 22.04. And we're going to log in with root. And I highly recommend you log in with an SSH key. And what you can do is you share your .pub version to your public version of your SSH key from your computer into your profile on Civo. And then that way you can just add it automatically to your VM. Therefore, you don't have to remember any kind of root passwords and so forth. There's no initial script. And I'm just going to say YouTube video for a tag. So I can, filter by it and so forth. So let's hit create. It's pretty quick. Okay, now it says it's building and it's usually really fast. We've got these actions below. And while that's going on, we've got a public IP already. So while that's running, I'm going to copy that public IP. I'm going to head over to networking and go to the DNS section. And I've already got a jaldstudios.co.uk domain here. I want to create some subdomains, so therefore we can pretend they're different clients. Well, actually, I've actually got two kind of clients, family members. I don't use WordPress for my clients, but for family members, WordPress can be really good. Let's go to the existing DNS records. And let's have a look at actions, and you can add a record. But in this case, I'm just going to update it to be the IP of the new VM. And it does have a TTL of 600 seconds, which is about 10 minutes. Not about, it is actually 10 minutes. So let me save that. And let me do the same for the other subdomain as well. And when you're creating one, what you put in the name is the subdomain parts. You don't put, in this case, .jaldstudios.co.uk. It will automatically append that. Hit save. And you can see those two have been updated and they will match 19. So it's 197 at the end. They will match the virtual machine. Let's see how that's getting on. It's already created. Jald Studios Videos. Let's click on it. And it's being created. Okay, awesome. So next thing I want to do is grab a terminal. Now I've got a terminal, I'm going to add the IP to my SSH config so it makes sure it uses the right key each time. I'm sure there's a flag you can use if you don't want to do this, but I highly recommend doing this. So if you go into your home directory and if we open SSH hidden folder and go to config, you can see I have got some entries here already. So let me copy this. If I press number 4 and double tap Y, we're in Vim, then it yanks 4 lines. You can see it says at the bottom. And then let's go to the end here and let's paste in those 4 lines. But I'm going to change this to be Jald Studios Videos. This IP, I'm going to use the one for our actual VM, and so we can connect to it directly if we want to, but you can also use the host name on the command line, which is really nice. And I'm going to be using the same SSH key. You can create different keys for different servers if you want. So let me save that. I'm going to log in as root as well. I can SSH to it via the IP, or I can also do it, if I don't want to remember the IP, by Jald Studios Videos, and it will also automatically map to the IP. So now we enter the passphrase for my SSH key. This is not for the server. Hit enter, and we've now logged in. And you can see I'm in this server. Okay, great. So the first thing we probably want to do is let's install Apache and maybe get the domains routing through to the web servers, the virtual hosts, and then we can add PHP, add MySQL, and add WordPress. Therefore, we kind of step up and check things are working along the way. And the great thing about that is it gives the DNS time to propagate. So what we'll do here is we're going to use app, the package manager for Ubuntu, and we're just going to say update, get the latest information. Once that's finished, we're going to install Apache 2. And if we go to the external IP in the browser, let's have a look and see what we get. and we get the Ubuntu Apache page, which is great. So we know that we're going through to our server and Apache is running. Next thing we want to do is create some virtual hosts so we can have one server for multiple domains, which really keeps costs down. Because most of these websites, they're quite efficient and also they don't get a lot of traffic all at the same time. So you can kind of share the resources that way. Let's create some folders for our websites. And where we'll put them is in var www, and we'll put it the same name as our domain. So as you saw from the subdomain, one of them was Madalena Pinto, and it was .jalstudios.co.uk, but I'm going to set these up as a placeholder, and when they're all configured correctly, I can just update the actual proper domains. And I want to show you in the virtual host how you can do that so it works for two domains, the temporary subdomain, and then for the final domain, so once they're updated with their DNS, it automatically just works out of the box. But I'm going to make this the actual name, just the final domain. And then the other one was Anik Kajara. And if we list everything in the var www directory, we can see that we've got those two, and that's the default one that was created, which we're not going to use. But they're owned by root. That's not great. We will need to change that. We need to be owned by www-data. So therefore, Apache can actually read and run those files. So we can say chown www-data and data, and we'll put it to the same paths as well. And then also, so therefore, if we do the list again, go back to the history, you can see now they're not owned by root anymore. So we can put HTML file in those directories to make sure that when we actually navigate to them in the browser that we're showing the right one, to make sure there is a difference between the two. So let's have a look. So in the var www, Madalena, oops, that's the directory, gone too far, index.html, and these will be PHP later. We will get to that. Let's just test things at each step of the way, because DNS stuff and naming and virtual hosts, I always make a typo. So let's put this in and we can just say hello, Madalena Pinto. Okay, so let's save that. And then we'll do the same for the other folder. And then we can say here, hello. And we can see there's a difference when we get to them in the browser. But we need to configure some virtual hosts in Apache now. So let's do that. So the next thing I want to do is Apache config is in etc Apache 2 site available, and then it's the domain again. I usually match the folder to keep it exactly the same. So it'll be Madalena Pinto, and it'll be .conf. And then in here, we're going to type virtual host, capital V, and then we're going to listen on all the IPs that this server has access to, but only on port 80 for the moment. We will do SSL, we will listen on 443, but we'll get to that shortly, and it's surprisingly easy. And then we'll close that off with virtual host. So in here, we want to put the server name, and I'm going to put this as the subdomain. And then underneath that, we're going to do a server alias. And so this will be the final domain of the site. So the final domain will be madelenapinto.com. And so if you go to .com now, it's not going to come to this server because we haven't updated that domain's DNS. But when we do later on, say in a week's time, when we've configured the WordPress site exactly how you want it, set it up, then it will all just work out of the box. So this virtual host will serve these two domains. Next, we want to document root. This is where the files of the website will be. In this case, we put them in var www, and again, the same name. Hopefully I spell everything right and don't make a typo. And that's the directory it will go in. And we can put different logging per virtual host, which I highly recommend. That allows us to look at the logs, not getting all this other data from somewhere else and trying to, like, in your mind, filter out where the logs are coming from. So here, what I suggest using is using the Apache log dir, so it goes in the right place. But then in the error log, rather than just writing error log, which is the standard log for Apache, we can prepend it with error.log. And then same with the custom logs, like access logs and so on. So we'll prepend it with the Apache log directory because we don't want to do the whole path. And then again, we will prepend the file name, Madalena Pinto, so the name of the virtual host, it's access.log, and at the end you need to put combined. Okay, so we've got one virtual host set up. Let's do another one. So I want to cheat, and so you don't have to watch me do that. I'm going to copy that file, and then I'm also going to change it, and therefore you don't have to sit through and watch it all. So if we copy using the cp command, and then we're going to copy it to the same directory, but with the other virtual host name. Now I've created another file and the content is very similar, but changing it for the domain that we want. So I'm going to save that. And so we have two. Now that's done, we actually need to enable it. So if I go into the Apache directory, you'll see we've got sites available and sites enabled. So in terms of sites available, we have the ones I just created and also a couple of default ones that Apache creates. We'll disable those later. But then if I go into sites enabled, we haven't got any of the ones we just created. And these are symlinked, but we don't have to do them manually. We can actually do it with A for Apache to enable site, and you give it the name. So it was Madalena Pinto. It's enabled. You can see it says enabling site. And then the next thing we want to do is the other site as well. It's enabled that. And now it's telling us that we need to reload Apache to pick up the configuration. And we can also run a config test, which is pretty good. So you could say Apache control, and you could do config test just to make sure everything's working. Everything looks, syntax looks okay. This you get unless you change it from the local host, which I never bother to do. So next, what we can do is actually put the SSL certificates on top, because if you're running PHP or HTML, you probably still want SSL, and it's pretty straightforward to do. So let's install some more packages. So apt install certbot, and also Python 3 cert, or not 4, it's Python 3 certbot Apache. And we'll say yes to that. So now we've got that. I'm going to clear the terminal, and we can do certbot, and we could say with the Apache flag, and it's going to take us through it with a wizard. So let's have a look. So enter the email address. Then it'll send us for notifications, terms and conditions. Do we want to share our email? No. And it lists the domains that we've got in our Apache server. So I'm not going to create it for this one yet, because we're not going to be using that. We're going to be using the subdomains to begin with. So let's create it for the subdomains. So to, and it says you can separate it with a comma. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a different certificate for each one. So let's create two for Anik, kajoa.jazstudios.co.uk. And now it's deployed it and updated our Apache config. So if we have a look at etc Apache config sites available, extension.conf, you can see now it's put in these rewrite rules to redirect, and it's also put in another SSL one as well, so we can see with more information. So that's great. Let's do the same again, but we're going to do it for the other domain as well. So we'll pick that from number 3 this time. That's gone through and used the same information that we set last time, the same email address, our same preferences, which is great. So let's go to the browser and have a look and see if our sites work. So you can see this is madelenapinto.jazstudios.co.uk, and it says hello Madalena Pinto. And if I go to anikkajoa.jazstudios.co.uk, it says hello Anik Kajoa. So we've got two different static sites hosted at the moment with SSL. There is a padlock up there. So if I click on this, you do get the padlock, and it does show you the certificate, which is awesome and really straightforward. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to get PHP running, and then also we want to add WordPress. So not long to go. The worst is over. If you're still here, you're awesome. Give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So let's install MySQL server. We can do that with apt again, and we can say install MySQL server. I'll grab that. And we'll come back and configure this shortly with different usernames and passwords for each installation of WordPress. So therefore, no accidents are going to happen. There'll be different databases, but just in case you don't want to use the root user, you want to use specific users for each one. Okay, that looks happy. So we should have MySQL. We can test that with MySQL -u for the user, and the user is going to be root, and we have no password by default. That's something you want to set up, and you can see we're in MySQL. Show databases, and it shows databases, and we'll create some shortly, so we'll come back to that. Next thing we want to do is install PHP, so we'll do apt install PHP. We'll want Apache to mod PHP, and we will want PHP MySQL because WordPress needs to communicate with MySQL. So let's install that. And we can test this by doing PHP -v for the version, and we've got version 8.1.2, so that looks good. Next thing I want to do is test that it's running with Apache. It's running on the command line, we know that, but is it being served up to our web server? So if we then go into our actual code for our website, we can go and change it. So let's just pick one of them. So Madalena Pinto, index.html. Well, what I want to do is I'm going to create an index.php, and in here we can do open the PHP tags, and we can do an echo, or we can do PHP info like so. And then I will save that. And I must remember to remove the index.html because that takes priority, and you can configure it not to take priority, but I want to leave it how it is, but I'm just going to remove it because it's not going to be needed. We're going to put WordPress in here anyway. So let's remove that. I don't need to restart anything. So we changed it from Madalena. So if I refresh Anik, it stays the same. If I refresh Madalena, so let's go to the web page and refresh it, and you can see now it's displaying PHP info, so the PHP version. So we know Apache is serving the PHP code. So that's all working really well. What should we do next? Database, let's go have a try. So what we want to do now is in the database, let's connect. And you do want to create a root password, but I'm going to leave that blank for now as this is just an example video, but I would highly recommend configuring that. Let's create a user so they can have access to that database. We'll grant access in a moment. We're going to create the MP user. They can connect from any host. And then we're going to say they're identified by the password, and we'll do MySQL native password. And we're just gonna do MP here, but I highly recommend making sure you do a randomly generated password that's quite complicated. So we've created that user and create the database. So if I just say create database, Madalena Pinto, and then if I show you the databases, you can see Madalena Pinto is there, and let's grant the user access to that database. So what we can do is grant all on the database name, which was Madalena Pinto, and all the tables to, and then we just specify the user, which is MP, and we're going to say from any host as well. And so now that's been done, so the two should be connected. We mustn't forget none of these changes take effect until we flush the privileges. And that means almost like the Apache restart, and now they've taken effect. So we can exit MySQL. We do need to install some more PHP packages via apt for it to work for WordPress. It needs more features and more libraries, that's fine. So we'll need PHP curl. We'll need PHP GD, which is graphics library, PHP MB string, PHP XML. So you can, after you do all that input install, so after you do apt install, you can list as many libraries as you want from that package manager. So where do we get to? XML, we want PHP XML RPC, also PHP SOAP. I did not know WordPress uses that. Maybe it's there just in case you need. PHP International for translations, and then PHP zip. Let's hit enter and let's grab all those. If you make a typo in any of those, apt will say it couldn't find the package. Okay, so PHP version will still be the same and it'll still be working. We just added some more kind of dependencies that PHP can use. So the next thing we want to do is restart Apache, just make sure all the configuration has been taken on board. So yes, that's been restarted. And another thing we need to do also in our config for Apache is we need to make sure that we allow override for HT access to work. So if we go to sites available and we do Madalena Pinto conf, and in here we can do it just underneath the top part, and we can say for directory var www Madalena Pinto, we want to allow override all. And you can be more specific if you want with that to be more secure. But again, for simplicity of this, I'm going to say everything. And let me save that. Well, actually, that indentation is terrible, Eddie. That should be indented one more. And there we go. That looks a bit better now. Let me save that. And now I definitely need to do Apache restart to pick up that config. And we must also enable to Apache to enable mod. And we need the rewrite mod as well. So, it's already enabled. Brilliant. It's good to just check. And we can also check the Apache config. Make sure I did not mess anything up. Again, looks okay, syntax okay. And this is the same as before. So now let's get WordPress. So let's go to the temp directory to download WordPress. So I've got this command here to download the latest WordPress as a tarball. So let's just download that. And then we will unzip it. So we'll unzip it, untar it. So it's tar. Let's extract the tarball. XZVF. Yeah. It's the latest tarball from WordPress. Now that's done. We've got that. That's great. Let's create a HT access file in that directory. So we can say we're already in the temp directory. So we can say WordPress and we can say HT access. So we've touched just means kind of create an empty file. And then we also want to copy the example config. And we want to make it just without the word sample. So we'll put it into the WordPress directory and we'll say config.php. So now we've copied that. And we also want to make the upgrade directory. I always forget this, but this allows us to do an upgrade through the web UI. So make WordPress content upgrade. Okay, so that's created as well. And the next thing we need to do is copy it where we want it to be on the Apache virtual host. So we can say copy, we want all, and we want to say WordPress to var www Madeline. So it's going to overwrite the file we have in there, but that's fine. So let's do that. Let's copy that. Done. And we need to now change the permissions. So if I go to the sites we have, and if I list the files in here, you'll see it's like nobody, no group. So we need to fix that. So let's go up a directory, and we can fix that for Madalena Pinto. So what we need to do is we'll need to do a chown, and we want it to be recursive. And then we want it to be www data for Apache. And this is exactly the same for the group. And it's going to be for Madalena Pinto. So that's done. So if I list it, that looks a lot better now. And the next thing we want to do is we want to find everything in that directory. We want to type folders in that directory. And we want to execute this command. WordPress gives us this. It's to make sure the permissions are not too open. So we want to change it. So chmod, we're going to run the command for every directory, and we're going to change it to be 750. And then the other one we want to do in Madalena Pinto, we want to do something very similar, but we want it to be for files. And the files need to have the permissions changed to 640. It's exactly the same. It's a bit longer because a lot more files. For logging in and authentication, all that sort of stuff with WordPress, you need to create salts and so on. And they give you a command that you run, a curl command, and you run this and you put this into the config. But I'm going to leave that out for now because just copy and paste. But what we want to do is change the database information. So if we open Madalena Pinto and then we do the WordPress config one that we created, it's not the sample one, and you'll see it says we got to define the database name. So we called that the full name, if I remember correctly, Madalena Pinto, and then the user was MP, and also so was the password. Again, this is not something that you want to do for a production server, but I'm just keeping it really simple because I want to make enough mistakes as it is without me trying to remember crazy passwords. Okay, so now that's been done. And just to show you under that file is where you would set these keys that I did with the curl command. It generates it for you. So you can paste that in again. I want to keep that really simple. If you ever change that in the future, it will just log out any logged in users. But it doesn't mean your data is lost or anything like that. So let's have a look. So if I go to Anik Kajoa, it shouldn't change. We changed nothing on that. So we still get this text up here. But if I go to Madalena Pinto, I didn't remove this file. I hope it got overwritten, but let's have a look. Yes, it works. We have WordPress. Continue. Let's just test it out to make sure it writes to the database correctly. Admin and my email. The first time you do this does take a while because it's installing. So it's going to create all the tables and all the data and so forth. I'm not going to log in. I want to show you the front end. And you can see this is a basic WordPress site that you've got up and running. You can change template and change the data all via the CMS. But refresh madelenapinto.jazzstudios.co.uk. And if I do Anik Kajoa, it still haven't done WordPress on it. But you can just do the same thing again for this virtual host for the other domain. So I'm not going to bore you with that. My point is you've got two separate on the one single server. And I think that's pretty awesome. Keeps your costs down. And we've got SSL as well, which a lot of people host WordPress on kind of like a one-click install so they can get SSL and all those sorts of things. But you can do it yourself with a few commands. It's pretty straightforward. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want to geek out between videos and live streams, there's a link in the description below to our Discord server where we have community calls, we chat daily, we have stand-up channel, wellness, lots of awesome stuff going on. I look forward to seeing you there.